everyone. You are watching Inspired by Zaya, Mongolia's first English entertainment talk show.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Larry King Live. We have a special guest today featuring an 8-year-old kid coming all the way from Mongolia, Mr. Н.Амаржин. How you doing, kiddo? You're from Mongolia. How's the economy holding up during this time of pandemic? I would assume that it hasn't been easy for anyone across the world. Has it taken a hit? What makes Mongolia unique?
I'm so happy to meet you again with my really and rapid new episode. I just want to proudly introduce Mongolian really educated, intellectual and multifaceted Mongolian generation. That is why today I've invited this really special guy who's Mr. Н.Амаржин. Н.Амаржин, hi, how are you? Are you ready to speak in English?
Absolutely, and thanks for having me, Miss Zaya. Or should I just refer to you as Zaya?
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
So, how are you, Н.Амаржин?
I am doing well.
How did you learn English? I heard that you grew up in America, right?
Well, I've spent a considerable amount of time since I was 12.
12.
So
Wow.
not necessarily growing up, but you know, I spent nearly all of my teenage years in America. I did spend some time in Canada, about a year and a half.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, during my senior year in high school.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's, you know, being in the United States has certainly helped with my English. I didn't really have much choice, right? So yeah.
So you graduated this Colorado Denver University there,
That's right.
So tell me about your university, and I also knew that you worked there as an English teacher. How did you teach English language to the native speakers?
Well, I was a SAT instructor when I was in college.
Right.
So I think during my first or second year, I did that for about a year, and I was an SAT instructor. I think that gig begun in 2010, so about 9 years ago. And I taught SAT to Mongolian and some American students who were underclassmen. Let's say I was freshman in college, and they might have been sophomores or juniors in high school. And you know, I was offered a job to instruct the SAT preparations, and that was absolutely an outstanding experience for me. I had a blast.
Yes,
I was absolutely privileged, and you know, that is part of the reason why I am here today doing what I do, because you know, going through such an amazing experience at such a young age, you know, that has certainly transcended who I was and who I would eventually become, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So you got this double major, right? Political
Absolutely.
science and economics. So
Right.
what didn't you work by your major study?
I did.
Really? You did?
Yeah, I briefly did.
So tell me the details.
Well, I worked at a law firm called as you can see on my CV, Wangelander and Heisterkamp.
Oh, yeah, as an assistant, right?
Assistant, and then after graduation, I briefly worked there as an economic, economic specialist, because you had to do a lot of number crunching. You know, the law firm worked with the Native Americans. I worked for a couple of companies here as well prior to establishing Universal. So yeah, one of the more notable ones being SkyTel, which is obviously one of the 4 telecommunication companies. Worked there as an investment and strategic analyst. So I guess you could count that as me pursuing or perhaps having an experience in the field of economics, but I never really worked as the political scientist type. So yeah.
So I just want to emphasize one thing is now you're an English teacher and established your own English center, right? So tell me about your Universal English Center. What makes the center special?
A
lot of teenagers.
It was founded in March 2014. So
Oh yeah.
it's been over 5.5 years ago, and you know, coming back to Mongolia, I had this huge dream, vision, right? And before you start to kind of implement those things, you need to find your footing. And that was a lot of struggle at first, because I really haven't lived in this country, you know, since I was 12. So I needed to find my footing, and that took me back a couple of years, perhaps 2 years to be exact. And at the 2-year mark, I basically said to myself, enough is enough, and you know, I need to get going. I need to help pursue and accomplish what I've always dreamed of. And I've always felt like me graduating from Colorado and me having the opportunities, you know, and the abilities that I have now it's not just me, you know. Perhaps I was lucky to a certain extent. I had a lot of privilege, and not many people have the same kind of privilege that I was given, right? Going abroad at such a young age. So, you know, I wanted to make sure that the next generation, right, my little brothers and sisters would have the same, you know, at least a similar opportunity. And that was one of my goals when I first founded Universal. And, you know, from day one, we wanted to give kids an unusual and extraordinary experience where you can only find it in a foreign country at the time. I mean, there are a lot of wonderful places now, right? So, you know, a lot of the high school students may kind of envision or imagine going to school in America, and we wanted to bring that type of school here, right? So the teaching methods would have to be more of inspiration based, you know, the theme of this show, right? It has to be inspiration based rather than, you know, using coercive tactics, right? So you can't force and push people, especially when you're helping them learn another language, because learning another language is paradoxic. Everything is different.
Yes, that's
right.
True.
So the mindset and the way you work is different. So you can't teach it as if you were to teach math, for example. So you need to bring out the creative side. You need to bring out the, you know, a side that makes people say, wow, I gotta come back to this place again. And that is something I've always emphasized ever since March 2014, and that was something I continue to do and pass on to my fellow teachers as well. And ultimately make sure that those students wouldn't just be learning English, but also having the opportunity to study abroad, and preferably with full tuition scholarships. And that's something we all have to include in the package. Right?
Yeah. So I noticed that you gave some advices and tips to Mongolian youth who wants to study abroad by their essay writing. Of course, they have to write their study plan and, you know, promote themselves, right?
Right.
So what would be your greatest advices and tips to younger people who want to study?
I mean, you know, there are only few rules, and and I think you can find a lot of tips online. But on top of that, I usually want to make sure that our students, being Mongolians, right? As Mongolians, we need to find our uniqueness, strengths, and weaknesses as Mongolians, because yes, we are part of 7 billion, but we're also part of 3 million, and you know, some of it being a Mongolian may play to our advantages, or maybe even disadvantages if you emphasize on it too much. So the biggest mistake that our kids make is that, you know, I think it has to do with our education system, or it's that we're surrounded by a box, and
Yes,
we want to include information that's already included in some of our applications, right?
Yes.
Because you don't need to, you know, mention your name and what you do again, right? You need to start your essay with an anecdote, for example, right?
Yes,
As I was looking through the window kind of thing. You gotta start right away. Gotta start right away. And we oftentimes confuse creativity with any other adjective, you name it, right? Intelligence or accomplishments, talented. These are qualities that have special purposes, right? You know, if you're intelligent, if you're skilled, if you're creative, if you're hard work, etc., persistent. But again, creativity is another whole different angle. So when our students are writing an essay, we want to be creative, but you know, we try too hard. If you want to be creative, then you don't have to sound too, you know, intelligent, or it's just you have to be creative. You have to be creative. So, for example,
I got the point right.
For example, I had a student who wrote 1,500 words essay just about a one piece of bread. And you know, and she talks about how this bread is irreplaceable, and this, you know, another version of it cannot ever be created, etc. And through that piece of bread, you know, she basically kind of showed off, demonstrated her skills.
Yeah.
And that's being creative. And then our students tend to stay away from that because that's too silly. But it's not, right? Yeah. So those are the things, you know, I mean, there are so many things, you know, if you go step by step, but generally those are the things that you want to emphasize on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. That's so nice. I'm
Thank
really
you.
proud of you, Н.Амаржин.
Thank you.
So one of the thing is that you participated very first time from Mongolia, participated this international youth leadership program in
yes.
Czech Republic, right?
Absolutely.
So what did you do there? How was that?
Yeah, it is one of the most prestigious conferences that is held among college students, and
College students, right?
yeah, university students, right? And I just had the absolute privilege to be selected. I don't know why they picked me, but you know, there were steps, you know, series of steps that you have to go through and get, you know, and then become eligible and move on to the next ones. And the purpose of that program is to have 100 of the top students from around the world.
Around the world?
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
around the world. So that's why me being only Mongolian there, around the world. And basically, the ultimate goal is to have the next generation network, right?
Oh, networking.
Right.
Oh, I see.
That's the ultimate goal. So, you know, from model European Parliament to International Criminal Court, etc. Having those students do those activities, we find our, you know, kind of inner strengths, and we find our specialties. Maybe oftentimes we find our passion as well, and that's something we did, and we networked, and then up to this day, it's been 8 years now, and up to this day, I've got buddies who have done very well with their lives, right? Some of them went on to do pretty accomplished government work. Some of them have gone to do startups, which are very successful, etc.
I see.
So yeah, that was a very rewarding experience on mine and many others' hands.
Got it. Ladies and gentlemen, you are watching Inspired by Zaya, English Entertainment Talk Show. Our talk show is reaching to you from W Restaurant. We're located right side of Mongolian National Museum of History. So, Н.Амаржин, let's change the topic a little.
Okay.
Everybody knows you as a comedian, right? So first,
I'm not sure about everybody.
everybody knows because of the Mongolia Got Talent, right?
I think Mongolia's Got Talent certainly played a huge role in my career as a comedian, and I'm very grateful for everyone who was involved to get me there and then help me along the way.
Yes.
And yeah, it was such. I mean, you know, I still have this nostalgia, right?
Yes.
Ja, mana хоёрын бат явлаа.
Hey, hey. Ladies and gentlemen, this is beatbox. Yo, where we go? Where we go? Ready? Mama.
Явлаа.
Gentlemen.
I played back, and it was such a transcendent. It was such an incredible experience on my part, because a lot of it felt surreal. Because you have to wait for about 8 to 11 hours before the first tryouts.
Really, 8 to 11 hours?
8 to 11 hours.
Oh
So
my God.
yeah, and you know, when you wait that long, and you know your time comes up, and then there are about 5 minutes left, and they warn you, you know, they just make you nervous. Normally, I wouldn't be nervous, you know, in front of a crowd, but when you wait for so long, they just build up your anxiety.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
They are, yeah.
And in retrospect, I don't remember much, you know, about the judges' comments, or because I was just absolutely nervous. I was an absolute wreck.
But you
inside.
didn't look like that.
Well, thank God. Yeah, hopefully. But you know, and then you move on to the semifinals, and knowing that you moved on to the semifinals, and then semifinals performance, you know, that was something I prepared for about 6 months or so. Yeah.
6 months.
Yeah, and in full honesty, here's a full disclosure, I did not know that I would go on to the finals. So I had absolutely nothing left. So I had to prepare my finals performance for 4 days. Yeah.
So, actually, now honestly, I really like you as a comedian, because I think that you're really intellectual, right? Your comedy performances, I really like that. So, some of your performances sounds like tongue twisters, right?
Oh yeah.
You got this really natural skill of language.
I was imitating.
Things,
Yeah,
right?
I was imitating the horse race commentator.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. Well, not necessarily tongue twisters. It's just really fast.
Yeah, it sounds like.
fast.
When did you first know you're funny?
You know,
First realized that.
some of my friends still don't think that. So
Really?
they said I have a funny face. I don't, you know.
Funny face.
Yeah, they said I'm not funny. I just have a funny face. I guess that works, right? Either way.
No, I don't think so. You got this serious face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
You don't look so.
I'm not a very good judge of the facial structure, because I actually think that I'm good looking. So
Yeah, you are.
that means I'm not a very good judge. Anyways, I don't know. You know, ever since I was a kid, I guess I was kind of a goof head who just wanted to joke around, and then
I see.
that really translated into teenage years when, yeah, you know, it's just. Personally, I really love to laugh myself. I just
Really?
love to laugh.
Wow.
And knowing that, you know, I can make others laugh, that's just surreal. That, you know, I'm speechless when it comes to having this cognizant realization that, God, this is what I do for a living now. Well, it's just part of it, right? And that's. That's pretty incredible to me. So it's not much of a, you know, I woke up one day and then I realized something. It was just something that I've always wanted, that I've always done in my daily lives, You know, I easily laugh at others' jokes, and then, you know, I tried to make others laugh. That was just basically part of my lifestyle per se. Well, not exactly lifestyle, but it was more of just sudden reflexes, just to make a joke out of things, right?
Right.
That's the kind of kid I was. So yeah.
Yeah. I always contemplate that comedians, they are really good observers. Are you?
You know,
Because you know, you always observe things that
right.
precisely, right?
Comedians are. I'm not. I try to observe. Now that, you know, when you're working on a comedy material, then you deliberately try to observe.
Yes.
You see, my wife is a great observer.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So she would tell me ideas. Why don't you make a joke
and
about
then you
that?
develop.
Right?
Yeah.
And yeah, some of it works, some of it doesn't. Maybe
Yeah.
you know, maybe it's just not a joke material, or maybe I'm not able to make that into a joke. Maybe it's a combination of both. But yeah, you know, my wife would tell me great ideas about you know, certain topics, and those oftentimes come to life.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, as a comedy. So yeah, for example, she would say, you know, why don't you talk about how our parents used to raise us?
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, you know, like
It was a really good idea. I remember
Yeah.
the performance of you.
yeah. And then, you know, we're still recently talking about this one that I haven't talked about yet. I haven't performed this one yet, but like, she wants me to talk about how our parents used to, you know, give us their pee to drink. Right?
Yes. When you
And-
get sick.
Yeah, and apparently you can't do that. I realized that now. You can't do that. I am 28 years old. I realized in the last few months you're not allowed to drink pee, right? Yeah, but I genuinely didn't know. Now you know, now that's something that I can probably do a bit about. Yeah.
Okay. So, do you have these influencers? Do you have influencers as a comedian?
The people who have impacted me.
Yeah, impacted me, or motivate you, or inspire you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, you see, I always have to tip my hat to the guys who were before me in Mongolia, right? Guys who set up this whole field, right? You know, that those are people who always tip my hat to. Those are people who I will always respect, giving me the opportunity to be up on stage. Right. So obviously you've got guys, as you guys all know, all those guys I'm grateful who were before me, right? And so that's at the local level, and at the international level, my favorite comedian is Trevor Noah.
Oh, really?
He's very intelligent. He's one of the best comedians in the world. And just the humor, kind of goofy, funny wise. I've always admired Kevin Hart.
Did you ever met him?
Oh, of course not. Obviously, my wife and my daughter, who is 1 year and 9 months old, is my inspiration, because she gives me such great ideas of just being herself, and she gives me such joy. The idea is that's probably 1% of my joy. So overall she gives me joy of helping me understand what it means to be a dad, what it means to be a human being, and what it means to love someone. Right. So I think that's the biggest inspiration you can get. And since we're talking about inspiration, my parents and my wife's parents, I don't think they should go unnoticed, right? I have to talk about them. My grandma, who actually raised me. My parents didn't raise me. I'm sorry, Mom and Dad. I know you're gonna be listening to this. My grandma raised me, right? I have to talk about her. And they've been my inspiration along the way. All these years.
Wow. Good. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Inspired by Zaya English Entertainment Talk Show. Our talk show is reaching to you from W Restaurant. We're located in the right side of Mongolia National Museum of History. As you see, today's our guest is Mr. Н.Амаржин. So, Н.Амаржин, you're a young person. What kind of plans
Hopefully.
do you... yeah. What kind of plans do you have and how will you achieve...
Future aspirations?
Yes, future aspirations and future purposes.
Yeah.
For example, how do you see yourself in 20 years?
I am the kind of person who tried to, find different passions along the way. I like to get the pleasure of doing something different, right? In terms of work and my career. So, a couple years ago is when I started doing stand-up comedy, for example, and then a year prior to that, I never would have imagined. And in terms of Universal, my English center, I still have the same dreams that I started, which was to help send thousands of students to achieve their dreams by, making sure that they can get the scholarship they need to the school of their desires. That's something that I think will stick with me for 5, 10, hopefully even beyond that, right?
Yes.
However many years. And, again, I'm gonna, personally, I have the aspirations to, try different things, maybe different startups, right? So hopefully at least half of them will be successful, right? And I hope to have at least one more kid. Personally, I like to get in shape, right? And exercise more often, drink more water. And I have this personal goal that is probably never going to be achieved, but for once in my life, I would like to have a six-pack here.
Oh yeah.
I don't think, that's probably the most difficult one. But that's the goal I've set for myself, and I'm not sure if drinking soda helps with that, but those kinds of things. Yeah.
Okay, good. Sounds perfect. So I have to ask you, one question is, tell me about your wife.
Yeah.
What do you really love about her? She's actually really pretty, right?
Yeah.
So
I think the better question would be.
How did you start?
Yeah, the better
Your
question would be,
relationship.
why does she love me, right? Because there are so many things to love about her.
Yeah.
And we've met through
you had this wedding, right?
Yeah.
Must have been an unforgettable day.
Oh, absolutely.
For your life. So tell me,
that was the, so I 2012, June of 2012 was when we started dating. We met through a friend, so.
Oh, I see.
So we got married 7 years after into the relationship. 2 years prior to our wedding, I proposed to her.
Oh,
and there's
wow.
a video on YouTube.
Oh, really?
If you look it up, yeah.
Oh, maybe I watched that.
Yeah. And we just had our wedding 3 months ago. And it was remarkable. It's I think especially girls, they dream of such an event throughout their whole life. And I was just happy to be part of that, basically.
I heard that you're kind of fragile or sensitive.
Where did you hear that from?
I'm a journalist.
Personally, I am a very, I think, emotional person. I would say,
Really?
because if it's a sad movie, I'll cry. If it's a love story,
cry?
Yeah.
You don't weep, right?
I don't know. Maybe it depends. Now I cry when I read books,
Really?
right? And it's just I try not to fake it, and oftentimes people who are close to me tell me that I need to keep certain things at a certain level, right? But the principle that I carry is that if I'm feeling something, I'm just gonna keep it real. if I'm mad, I'm mad. If I'm, I don't try to hide anything. I just bring my emotion with me all the time. I'm not sure if that's very emotionally intelligent, but I try to keep it real, right? And I'd like to think that I'm a good guy, and I think that's something, I guess, that identifies me. Maybe me being emotional, but hopefully most of the time it's in a positive way.
Okay. Wow, Н.Амаржин, actually you're totally different than I imagined.
Really?
About you.
What did you imagine about me?
Yeah, as a comedian, of course.
Yeah.
Our talk show has this special part, okay? Even though we're speaking in English now, we're still Mongolians, right?
You're right.
So you know about this Mongolian tradition for Uncle
Yes.
right?
Yes.
I just want to see your spirit, okay?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Pretty
go.
close.
Yeah, it was pretty close.
Pretty close. Yeah.
Okay, Н.Амаржин, thanks for coming and thanks for accepting my invitation. It's yours. It's all yours now. Okay.
Okay. All I gotta say is thank you guys for watching, and may our Mongolian kids become obviously good people,
Yeah.
great citizens, educated workforce, and obviously people who will ultimately contribute to the development of our country, and people who will treat each other better, overlooking our differences and boundaries. All right? And thank you guys, and personally I will try to help make this country a better place, and hopefully you guys can join me, and together we'll help create a bright future. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you. That was a real word. Wow. Thank you, Н.Амаржин. I wish you a lot of happiness and wish you all the best.
Thank you.
I'm really proud
I
of
wish
you.
the same to you.
Thank you so much. I'm really proud of you, okay?
Thank you very much. I'm very proud
Work
of you
hard
too.
and have a six-pack, okay?
Okay, I will try.
Okay.
Okay.
Good. It was Mongol's first English anytime talk show and inspired by Zaya. I always really proud of our Mongolian educated guys. So please guys study foreign language, especially English language, because it opens you a lot of doors. See you next week.